Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Ask North Arrow. Today we got a really complex question that involves swimming, and basically what it boils down to is what are some techniques that I can really do to make my swimming form or technique more efficient so my times improve during racing. This comes from an athlete who competes in triathlon. So today our special guest is Dan Christian. He's been coaching swimming for 11 years.
I coach swimmers who, from basically six months old to Olympic trialists, Division I college swimmers, basically swimmers of all levels and capabilities.
So Dan is an excellent guy to ask this question to.
Okay, thing number one that I noticed in the question, it's all about stroke efficiency and how do we make our strokes more efficient. And I know it was brought up, the recovery phase of the stroke, and what that means is basically when your arm is out of the water moving forward and how quick that should be. And I think that's definitely something that we want to notice if we're going really quick through our recovery. But the thing is that we want to focus on is what our arms are doing in the water. Because if they're doing the right thing, it doesn't really matter picking up that speed unless if we want to increase how fast we're going. And so things that are really important, and I think a lot of swimmers, especially anyone who's Googled stroke techniques, one of the first things that they're going to find is a high elbow recovery. So when you're finishing up your stroke, your elbow is actually going to come out of the water first before your hand. And so if you're thinking, gee, does my elbow come out? It probably doesn't. And so our elbow's coming out of the water first. We always want to keep our elbow higher than our hand. And you can see I'm not trying to do this, but when this elbow is up, my other elbow is down, and that's when my other hand is in the catch. And so the question about speeding up the recovery, if you're speeding or if you're basically trying to go faster, that's a good thing. But a lot of really good distance swimmers, they're not going to have a really quick recovery because what they're doing at their catch is basically they're getting a breath here or their face is in the water, and then they're pulling their elbow over their hand, and you can see my hand right now, my other hand, my right hand is moving forward, and as I'm pressing through my hip in the power phase, my other hand's about to go in the water at the catch and grab that water. And so what we're trying to avoid is any spot in our stroke where our arms, either one of them, are doing nothing to propel us forward. We always want to have that happen. And so I was talking with Casey, a function that, as a coach, I didn't know about that a lot of our smart watches have, and I know Garmin has this, is the SWOLF or SWOLF. And so if you look there and you see a number and you have no idea what it means, what that's doing is it's taking your 25 time and adding what your stroke count is per 25. So if I swim a 20-second 25 and I'm taking 17 strokes per length, then my SWOLF is going to be 37. And that's really going to be a good barometer of your efficiency. I can tell you right now, when I get in and swim, my comfortable phase is probably around like minute 45 to minute 40 hundreds, and I can do that for a couple thousand yards. And a lot of times after my workouts, my SWOLF is going to be around 37, okay? Because I'm going to be taking 13, right around there, strokes per 25, and then doing the math. How many seconds is that?
25?
Yeah, about 25 seconds. So I'm around like that 140 mark that we talked about. When it comes to speed of the recovery, I like to make it, instead of being that micro, more of a macro approach in how many total strokes you take per 25. Because you can have a really quick recovery, but if your hand's going in the water, and then instead of having your fingertips down and pressing through your hip, let's say I put my hand in and I just slide through like that. I bend my hand like that, which I've had really fast swimmers do, but not really good distance swimmers do. you're going to have a faster turnover, but in a triathlon where we're swimming 6, 7, 4,000, yards or meters, that's not what you want to do in the long run.
Yeah, so that's where I think, when you look at how fast should my turnover be, and will I be faster if I have faster turnover, or should I have less turnover and use less energy? I think about, when you look at the science of swimming, it's not necessarily how much effort you can put into swimming to go faster. It's all about minimizing drag, right? So when you put a body in the water and it has to go through the water, it's all drag. It's just like when you try to get really, really aerodynamic on a bike. Think about how much money people spend on aero helmets and aero wheels and faster bikes and getting a fit and getting small to cut through the wind. We're really looking at the same sort of science in the water, except it's really, it's the drag is exponentially worse because every little thing you do creates drag. And so, like, when I think about my swim stroke, I don't have a super fast turnover. In fact, a lot of times I'll have this, my catch hand will stay in the water until this one is coming up, and then I pull through. But when I'm swimming an Ironman distance swim, or half Ironman, you're talking 2,300 to 4,500 yards, and then having to bike and then run afterwards. To me, it's more about the efficiency, right? And so getting my fingertips in the water just right, catching early, and making sure when I catch, I'm pulling all the way through, and I'm not slipping, I'm not zigzagging my hand all around, and getting a good smooth pull all the way to my hip.
Correct.
And then I'm coming, as I turn, part of that turning, getting the elbow out, is if I'm pulling my hand out, I'm creating drag.
Right.
If I'm turning and I'm pulling my elbow out, I'm minimizing the amount of drag because I'm kind of using my body to get my hand out and staying kind of as long as I can, and minimizing how much extra stuff I'm doing outside of the streamline of my body. Because when you swim, you're creating kind of a little streamline, and you want to do as much as you can inside that streamline.
One of the things that I like to do if I have someone come in for some kind of stroke refinement or lessons, it sounds simple, but what I'll have them do is float on their front for 10 seconds. Because a lot of people, something I get a lot is I struggle in the water, and it's so hard, and a lot of new swimmers or people who aren't very efficient in the water aren't letting the water do any of the work.
Yeah.
And
Like a pencil drill you're talking about, just kind of getting long and floating.
I'm talking, arms by your side,
Oh, okay.
taking a breath and just floating on your front and keeping your heels up to the top of the water. Because what people do when you get in the water, it's like fighting instinct where your body's in the water. What's the first thing you want to do? Lift your head
Get your
up.
head out of the water.
Okay? And so I have swimmers who are working on body position, just float for 10 seconds. After we get the body position down, what we really work on is the hydrodynamics, which is what you were talking about before, with that really good technique with the high elbow recovery. Think of a speedboat versus a garbage ship. What does the bottom of that boat look like? Garbage ship is completely flat.
It's like me.
Speedboat is like this. So if you swim like this, okay, if that's your recovery coming forward like that, is it going to work? Sure.
You're plowing
Okay.
a lot of water with your shoulders when you do that.
Exactly.
And so when you're trying to create that streamline comes off your head and goes boom, and just hits a huge barricade, basically.
One of my favorite things to do to test my own stroke efficiency and work on that high elbow, I call it 3/4 catch up. Some coaches call it tap drill. It's different names for basically the same thing. But I'll actually stay out to my catch right here, and I will come over with the other arm, and I'll count with my fingertips about an inch above the water, 1/1000. Then this hand goes in, and once they're right next to each other, the other arm comes up, takes its stroke, 1/1000, hand in. And you can see each time I finish through my hip and my elbow comes up, what's that doing to my body? It's turning it on its side. I'm no longer a garbage ship. And when we're counting that 1/1000 out in front, and you don't need to pause here if you're not comfortable doing that, but if you're taking a stroke and you just allow yourself to pause for 1 second, you'll feel your body on its side, and you'll feel, if you're doing it right, that elbow up, and it gets you really comfortable at the catch phase, which is where basically either the start of a good stroke happens or things not so good happen. Been talking with Casey about what makes a good catch and what can help you out with that. And what I like to do is take training paddle. You can either use the square, or they have some that are more contoured, towards your hand. But what you want to do is leave that finger strap on there that goes around your middle two fingers or one finger. Take off the wrist strap. What that's going to get you to do is enter the water correctly with this middle finger, okay? And then you're going to reach forward. Any flaw that you have in the stroke, whether it's just after the catch or into your power phase, it'll pull off at your wrist if you're not doing the stroke correctly.
And then it's chaos.
Exactly. If you're coming out hand first, it makes it very difficult. If you're not finishing through your hip, it makes wearing or keeping that paddle on difficult. So that's something I like to suggest to people who really want to see if they're doing their catch, if they're making sure their stroke is as efficient as possible. Training. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, all this makes me think when I really, all the way back when I first started to learn how to swim, I had just a couple things that I would go to the pool and concentrate on like one thing. And so to break it down really simply, like how do I improve my swim technique? So like the first thing that I went to the pool and I would swim for an hour. And all I would pay attention, in fact I would use a swim buoy so I didn't have to kick. And all I would concentrate on is like I had like almost like a mail slot, like kind of right out here above my head. And when I would pull through, I would make sure I was like putting my finger in the mail slot. And then I would enter the water and then I would really push. And when you really push forward, it would rotate your body, setting you up for the next thing. And that's all I would concentrate on until I could do it without thinking. And then once that was down, then I worked on the early catch. So getting that elbow cocked and pulling it all the way through, keeping my hands below my elbow in the water. So when you're pulling through, you always want to kind of have your hand below your elbow. And then I would just practice catch and pulling all the way through. And then because my body was used to pushing forward, when I pushed forward, it put me in a position to be out elbow first. So then that was all I did. I went for weeks on end. And all I did was catch, pull is all I was thinking about. And then starting to work on the kick after I'd done those things. But those were the real basic techniques that made me way more efficient.
Right, now you probably don't have to think about it nearly
And now I
as
don't
much.
think about it nearly as much, yeah. Just little refinement, which really, I mean, we can talk about swim technique all day, but these are really generic things for you to practice, but having somebody really look at you and say, oh, this arm's crossing over, or this arm's pulling out, or you're picking your head up, you know, just really little.
Would you guys suggest videotaping yourself
if you
so you can look for these things?
Yeah, if you videotaped yourself, you'd probably be a little bit, maybe even shocked to see what you find, because what it looks like is sometimes a lot different than how it feels.
100%.
Yeah. But that would be my suggestion, is work on getting a great entry into the water and getting that arm out there. Work on an early catch, so that you're catching water. Because I wasn't doing that at first. I would kind of like muddle around in the water up here, and my hand wouldn't be at a great angle, and I wasn't catching good water until I was like really halfway through the stroke, hitting that big power phase. And then it was Dan that helped me. I was coming out hands first, and I was throwing water everywhere. And when I worked on just those couple of things, it really tightened up shop a lot.
Hey guys, well that's our episode of Ask North Arrow. Again, we want to thank Dan for joining us today and giving his input. Hopefully this helped you out, and we'll see you next time. Please submit your questions to asknortharrow@gmail.com.